All right, Joe. So I appreciate you sitting down with me today and going over a little bit for everybody out there. It's going to be great getting some perspective from a top quality agent just like yourself. So thanks for taking the time out of your busy day to go over with this with us. So to kind of start off, just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how long you've been an agent.
Sure. Yeah, so nice to meet you guys. Thanks for having me on, Pat. So I've been licensed since July 1st of 2011. I started with Remax Advantage and the Pakula professional team. In those almost 10 years, I've done over 800 transactions now at this point. And my business is pretty well mixed between, first-time home buyers, move-up buyers, sellers downsizing or relocating out of state, as well as investors. So actually, I met Pat and Danielle. Oh goodness, that would have been end of or maybe even mid 2012.
Yep.
In my first year in real estate, really. And if I remember correctly, we settled like very beginning July 2013 on your first house.
January, yes,
That's right, yeah,
January.
January 2013. Yeah,
All good. Yeah, we were the first one of the year for you. So
that's right. That's right.
yeah, well, that's exciting. So you've got plenty of experience in the industry. So I think picking your brain a little bit here can help a lot of first-time investors and even some seasoned investors get a better idea of how to find that perfect agent. So uh, real quick, you get a lot of people out there that are like, should I hire my friend or my family member, to be my agent? Does that really matter? What do you think in regards to that?
So one of my common answers is it depends, right? So if your family member happens to be an extremely well respected, qualified agent that knows what they're doing and has done a lot of business, and you know and trust them, and you sure that why not hire the people that's going to have your back, but be prepared that your relationship could eventually take a hit if something goes wrong or it doesn't go the way you hope. So, having those upfront conversations with the person that of, hey, if something goes wrong, how are we going to handle this? I've run into those situations as an agent with family members, not necessarily in the investment side, but just in a transaction that didn't go exactly as we planned. And, sometimes it hurt, sometimes it didn't. But the more upfront conversations I had, the better outcome that would be. But if your buddy just got his real estate license or her real estate license, 2 months ago, they've never done a transaction, it's a pretty big asset to put in their hands. It's not like if somebody starts up a business and they're selling jewelry, or something like that, and you want to buy a $200 necklace. That's sure, help your friends out. I mean, 100%, right? But if it's a real estate transaction, a couple $100,000, the most money you've ever spent on anything, and they've never done it, if they don't have great mentorship and leadership to help them along the way, or they're not partnering with a seasoned agent to make sure that they're not missing anything, that's pretty risky to help a friend out, in my opinion.
I 100% agree, and I think that right there is going to help a lot of people out because, like you said, it all really depends. That's the best answer for that one. So this
Yep.
kind of goes into the next question, um, where do you believe all agents are created equal?
Absolutely not. It's a pretty low barrier to entry in our business. It's basically, I think it's like 30 or 40, or no, 120 hours of coursework and 16 hours every 2 years of continuing education. And that's pretty much about it to get in the business. So absolutely not all agents are not created equal. The craziest thing is, I've been very successful in my career, and everyone always asks me what the secret is. And the answer is I answer my phone and I call people back and I respond to my emails. Like, that's pretty much my differentiating factor. The fact that I know what I'm doing and I've had a lot of experience and I know a lot of people and all that kind of stuff certainly helps, right? But the fact that I actually respect people and respond to them, and that includes the other agents we're dealing with, is such a difference maker in my business.
Exactly. So what you're saying is, if you're out there looking for an agent, the top three things should be: did they answer their phone and call you back as soon as possible? Did they respond to your email and get you an answer? And number three is, you know, do you feel like they know what the hell they're talking about? So yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, that's great. That's great. So in your eyes, a lot of investors out there always ask for an investor-friendly real estate agent. So what does an investor-friendly agent mean to you?
I mean, to me, an investor-friendly agent is one that understands the investment process, but is ultimately going to treat whether you're an owner occupant or an investor the same. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a fiduciary responsibility that we have. We're going to look at what the value of the home is as it stands today. Now, if you're an owner occupant, that matters probably more. That matters the most, right? What's it worth today? If you're an investor, it's important, but it's really not that important. It's what's it worth when you're done, your ARV, your after renovated value. But I think of the same way to my, to my owner occupants. I look at, hey, what's it going to be worth after you finish improving it? You can get the best deal in the world on the value today, but if it's only worth 50 grand more after renovating it and you spend 100 grand to get there, that was a terrible deal and you shouldn't have made it. Contrary, you could spend 50 grand over what it's worth today, but if it's worth 200 grand after you're renovating, it's only going to cost you 30 grand to get there. Let's do that deal every day. Can we get two of those, right? So
Exactly.
knowing your numbers, an agent that knows their numbers, that really looks out for their clients. I am very conservative when I'm working with investors on what the values are going to be. In fact, one of the guys I work with, every time I give him his ARV, he adds about 10 to 20 grand to it because he knows that I'd rather somebody miss a deal than lose money on a deal. So I'm going to be conservative and hope that we shoot above my estimate versus push it to that very tip top, and then we really fall in here.
Exactly. I think more investors out there, especially first-time investors, really need to understand and look at those numbers in a more conservative aspect. I think a lot of people always shoot for the top. They're like, oh well, the comps are 300, so I'm going to be at 300. Like, no, let's shoot for 275. And if we get there, great. But if the numbers work at 275, they're going to work at 300, right?
Exactly. And on that note, when if you're an investor and you're just getting in and you get on a wholesale list or something like that from wholesalers, which is a whole different side of the industry, and they tell you what they think the ARV is, take about 10% off that number right off the bat before you even look at anything. They're always going to go to like the absolute perfect scenario, plays out to get to that number, and even that may not even be feasible.
In bringing that up, let's talk about that real quick. So if you're on a wholesaler list and a wholesaler brings you a deal, does it make sense, or should that investor get a real estate agent involved in that transaction?
I mean, I think 100%. I mean, no matter how you acquire the property, it's the ARV that matters the most. And again, you can't trust the person selling you. I mean, you don't go into a car dealership and trust what they tell you, right? So it's the same thing when you're working with somebody who's on the other side of the table. They're looking out for their interest or their client's interest. They're not looking out for your interest. So yeah, I mean, knowing your ARV is incredibly important. Having the relationship with the agent that you're going to list the property back, so they have a vested interest in the deal, whether they're involved in the purchase side of it or not. Your agent that you have a relationship with should be willing to give you the ARV, knowing that they're going to get the deal back on the backside, whether they're involved up front or not.
Exactly. That makes a lot of sense. Now, if a lot of these wholesale deals, they're a consignment over, so the seller's not necessarily going to pay the commissions, right? Like they normally would, right? Agents typically get paid by the seller for the transaction. That's correct, right? So
correct. Yeah. So to be clear on that, just especially with things in the media right now. So when a seller signs a listing agreement, they agree to a total percentage of sales price that would be the commissions. The listing broker agrees to co-op a portion of that to the buyer broker, the agent that brings the buyer, as a marketing expense through the listing agency that has the listing, so that the seller winds up paying the total commission, but it's broken down and sort of seller to listing to buyer agent.
I appreciate that so much. I think that helps a lot of people out, because a lot of people, I don't think understand how that all gets broken down. Now,
Yep.
If let's say an investor finds a deal off market, or they find a wholesale deal and they want their real estate agent to help them out through the purchasing process, write the contract, or look over it for them, look at the ARV and things like that. And the real estate agent is willing to pay, or sorry, the investor is willing to pay the agent for their time. What do you think is a reasonable kind of number for that? Like a 1% or a number out of the deal, knowing that they're going to get the listing when they flip it or are going to sell it down the road anyways. Just a way to build the relationship. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a 1% fee is very fair. There are probably some minimums that would play, into it. If you're buying a $10,000 house, 1% is probably not going to cover the time. If you're buying a $1
Exactly.
million house, 1% might be, I mean, I'd love to take it, but it might be too much. But 1% is a baseline, and then you kind of, figure it out from there. It's the same thing. If I have like a past client that had a rental property and the tenant wants to buy the property, but they don't know the process. They don't want to deal with writing the contracts. And I'll step in usually for 1% and just handle, represent the seller in the deal, but handle getting it to closing. So it's the same kind of process.
Perfect. I really want to emphasize that people have the options in those transactions to reach out to their agent. And you also need to understand that everyone's time is important just as much as your time as a real estate investor is important. Your time as an agent is important. So there's a value to that time. And I think as an investor, showing your agent that you believe that they have value to bring to the table is going to be just as beneficial to them. So I think that's a great point, and I think a lot of people are going to learn something from that. So thank you. So what are some things that you think investors should be asking when they're interviewing that agent to see if it's a right fit?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think number one, an investor needs to be totally honest with their agent, whether they're interviewing or hired or whatever, in their experience level and what they know and don't know. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? So, but I mean, I'll tell you a story. I had a guy reach out to me. This is years and years and years ago, and he came to me and said, "Oh, I'm an investor. It's what I do for a living. That's all I do. I've done a ton of deals." Well, if somebody's I'm coming to a new market, but and you're the guy for this market, but I know what I'm doing. Well, then my level of starting at the beginning and walking them through the process is going to be a little bit different, because as I start that, oh, I know what I'm talking about. I don't need you to explain that. Well, as it turns out, it was his first deal. He had never done it. He had taken one of those, seminars and kind of thought he knew what he was doing. Well, he gets into a deal. It's an assignment deal, and he gets into it, and we're, looking at it, and there's a deadline to get the assignment in. And he wasn't going to do an inspection. He wasn't going to get his contractor to get out there and give him a budget. And I, really talked him through with it. And he at least got the well and septic inspected before he took the assignment, because that's something that especially if you're buying a house with well and septic, that's an unknown that could be $50,000 right off your budget, right off the top. I mean, that's hard to budget for those kind of hiccups, right? So get the well and septic looked at before you buy. And as it turned out, and the well and septic was fine, but as it turned out, he underestimated the construction costs by, I don't know, $50,000 or $60,000.
Wow.
And he was estimating like a $40,000 profit. Well, that meant he was in the negative. And he wound up losing, I think it was $20,000 in assignment fees that he lost to get out of the deal. And it's just, if he had been upfront with it, he probably would have missed the deal, because we would have missed our deadline, because I would have made him get the contractor. But had he been transparent, that wouldn't have happened. But I mean, to your question, what do you ask the real estate agent? Are you familiar with the location that I want to be in? Tell me about your experience level working with investors. Give me some success stories about your investors that have done well. Give me some stories about where investors didn't do well. What have you learned from that, to make sure that I avoid those pitfalls? Tell me about your time and your team. I think that's massively important, especially in today's quick moving market. Busy people get stuff done, right? And that's the old thing, give your project to the guy that's busy, because they're going to get it done. But how do they do that? Well, when they have a team of people, yeah, I might be on an appointment, but I can grab, Stephanie or Nikki on the team, or Katie, or somebody can go fill in when I can't make it, just to make sure we get everything done. I think those are some of the things you want to know from your agent up front.
I think you hit the nail on the head with all those. That's great. And that's one of the reasons why I love working with you and the team, is because somebody's always there to answer my questions. I mean, when we're out looking for that next deal, when we start looking again, we're buying something, right? And it's right. And time is money in this game, and getting the answers that you need, the comps that you need pulled, getting the contract signed, and all of that is extremely important, time sensitive. So having that team behind you and not being a one-man show is extremely important. So I I think a lot of people need to rewind that one and listen to it again to make sure that they know. So to kind of revert back to that one, you would not advise someone interviewing an agent to let them know that they're a seasoned investor just so the agent takes them a little bit more seriously and they feel like, you know, they're going to get better deals out there. So you would advise against that, huh?
Yeah, just be honest about what you know and what you don't know, and otherwise you're gonna, you know, you're gonna miss something. And frankly, I'd almost rather start working with the investor, you know, before they really get going, because I can cement that relationship. It's a relationship business, right? You work with the investors, you work with the owner occupant. It doesn't matter. It's the relationship that's important. So when you get started with somebody from the ground up and you can help them win from the ground up, well, then you have that relationship that's going to feed. I mean, I helped you, you know, with your first owner occupied house, which turned into a rental. And I know that was your game plan all along, but you know, it started off with an owner occupant, and then that relationship has led us to continue working together, you know, almost 10 years later.
Exactly.
You know, so the other investors I work with, you know, again, they started off in the very beginning, just, you know, looking for houses that they bought, and then they decided to get into the investment side of things.
100%. 100%. I think that kind of goes down to you know, how important it is to build that relationship with your agent. This relationship starting off shouldn't be that, all right, well, when I go to sell my house or when I go to find that next house, I'm going to go and I'm going to interview a couple other people because someone might say that they can, you know, they can give me 10 or $20,000 more. They know that they can go out there and do that, or, you know, they're going to sell my house faster or anything. You have to understand that this is a long-term relationship that you're building. And with those relationships sometimes comes, you know, little perks, you know, so to being able to do that, case in point, Joe, I know now with your team and everything else you have underneath of you, new people that are coming to the team, you know, they're going to get some of your newer real estate agents, just because you're moving on to different things. You've got higher priorities to go and you need more experience tapping into some of those other clients. But because we've had a relationship for so long, you know, I still get, you know, the 10-year experience, Joe Bird, when I'm going out to look at my properties. You know, even though that you're closing 100+ deals, you and your team are closing over 100 deals a year, you know, we're still going out and looking at $150,000, $200,000, you know, foreclosure investment properties because we've got that relationship. So I think people need to really think about that too. If you're planning on being in this business for a long time, that relationship down the road is gonna pay off huge, in the knowledge and the experience that you're going to be able to get.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much trust involved here, especially when you're looking at, you know, the ARVs when you're getting your deals. You need to know that your agent's on top of that. Otherwise, you know, you might get an agent that doesn't know what they're doing, whether they're experienced or not, and they tell you it's worth 50 grand more than it is. And then you buy the house, and that you know, that can blow your numbers up. You go negative pretty quick on something like that. So that trust factor, which really stems from the relationship.
Exactly. Now, let's revert back to these first time investors, right? Maybe they've bought a house before, maybe they haven't bought a house before, maybe they're thinking about house hacking and all that. Now, should that first time investor get pre-approved before they start working with an agent or interviewing an agent? You know, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think getting pre-approved before you get too far along makes sense, because that's going to dictate a lot of how things are going to work, the type of financing. You know, are you doing hard money? You doing more traditional financing? You know, your agent that you ultimately hire is going to have relationships with lenders as well. So I think kind of tying the two together makes a lot of sense, because it's really helpful when your agent and the lender have experience working together and they know how to communicate and help you, again, avoid a lot of pitfalls. So I think kind of joining up with your team of lender and agent makes sense. I mean, you know, Jamie Lennis does a lot of your financing. I've worked with Jamie. I've known Jamie since well before I was in real estate. And again, that team really kind of comes together to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks for you.
Exactly. So you kind of want to find the agent and the financing around the same time. So once you found your agent that you want to work with, reach out to them and see who they have relationships with in the financing world, because typically they'll have relationships with a hard money lender. They'll have relationships with conventional financing, so, and reach out to them first and see if that lender's a fit. So I think that's perfect advice out there. So with this agent investor relationship, should I be expecting my agent to go out there and find me good deals?
So, I mean, I think again, investor or owner occupant, absolutely your agent should be out there looking for properties for you, but it's not 2000, it's not 1980, right? It's like we're not the gatekeepers of the information anymore like back in the day. Everything's available on all kinds of different things. So like I set up a search in the MLS that goes out before I even wake up in the morning. It kind of flies out to my client's email, and I'm certainly, scanning, but I'm on appointments most of the day. So I'm not necessarily in the computer just hunting things down, but you know exactly what you want. I fully expect all my clients are going to be on Zillow or, realtor.com or whatever other app they want to use, to search for properties in addition to, the MLS. But you're also, there's wholesale lists that we can forward to you that you're also going to get on, especially as an investor. You're going to come across off market deals. So I look at it as, all hands on deck. We're all looking for your property.
Exactly. Right. 100%. Plus you're not going to be the one that's running the numbers. You're going to run the numbers for the after repair value. You're going to run the numbers to see if the comps in the area sold. But ultimately it's that investor that needs to know their numbers as well, and if the deal's going to make sense. So I think that's a great point, and I'm glad you hit that home right there. So
I think another thing, if you're flipping too, is having that relationship with your contractor, because those numbers are so important. And like, I'm not a contractor, we can spitball numbers in the field looking at a house. At the end of the day, I'm not a contractor. I can't confirm. I don't, lumber prices went up 3 times, right? I'm not tracking that stuff on a daily basis. Like, we can kind of spitball ballparks, but you need to really hone those numbers with your contractor.
Great point. Great point. So what sort of expectations should the investor be setting, or should the agent be setting with the investor when they're starting out, their relationship together?
Yeah. I mean, as an agent, I want to set the buyer on the accurate trajectory of the market. What's it doing? Right now the market's nuts. It's absolutely bonkers. You got to jump quick on a property. There's not many good deals on the MLS. So like, I'm going to be very transparent to say, this is where we're at. The good news is when you find your property, it's going to sell. There's a ton of investors right now that are pricing in the, 10, 15% appreciation that we're seeing, right now, year over year. Recent months are even higher than that on a year over year basis. That's risky. The market may not stay on that trajectory. Like, I personally don't want to price in an up or a down. I want to price in, I'm going to flip it in 30 days and the market's going to be the same where we're at. And I've got to build in that number. Okay, cool. The market goes up, I make more money. Ooh, the market went down. I still have profit here because I have, I have a buffer. So I think that's imperative that your agent sets the right expectations on the market. And again, when you're going to look at houses and how that relationship's going to work. And I really like to fine tune that. I think, as we talked about it earlier, you as the investor, you need to set the expectation of the realtor of what you really know, like how experienced you are, how quick can your contractors get out there. Do you have a background in contracting? You need, your budget. One of the guys I worked with, he was a contractor, so that part of it was the easiest part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have any background in contracting, then again, okay, we need to get your contractor out here to give you a number before we write a deal.
Great. That really boils down to, again, like you just said, first time investors, that are out there looking, they need to be able to set the expectations. They need to understand that when we're going in to start looking at properties, being pre-approved lets us know that if we find one, we can buy one, right? Exactly. Understanding your numbers and where you're looking for lets you know that when we find a good deal or a decent deal, does this make sense to move on? And also having those people in place to help you make those decisions, whether it's your contractor or somebody that's a friend, to be able to go out there, because everyone's time is very valuable right now. And you need to make sure that when you start this process that you're ready to pull the trigger, especially in a market like this that we're in right now. So
exactly.
So that's great. Now, you've dealt with a lot of first-time flippers, first-time rental property guys, investors. What would be, you know, one or two of the mistakes that you've seen first-time investors make, or things that they've overlooked, that you think would be great for people to know?
Well, I think, I mean, I already told you the story of the guy losing like 20 grand. So that's the number one story on a first time investor making a big mistake about misrepresenting his abilities. I think as a first time, you don't want to be arrogant and cocky and think you know more than all the people around you. But at the same token, if you know your numbers and you feel confident in them, you need to fight. I remember one of the investors I work with, first deal he did was just a deal that fell in his lap, and the numbers looked really good. And the hard money lender, it's the first time he had done it, and I wasn't my hard money lender, so I didn't have a relationship with him. And I mean, he fought me tooth and nail on my comps. Well, I don't think your comps are right. I think you're 50 grand, 100 grand off. This doesn't make sense. My comps were spot on. We sold for like 10 grand more than we listed for. And I think he made $150,000 profit in 30 days.
Wow.
Like, but if we didn't go to bat because we were confident in our numbers, he wouldn't have gotten the deal. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a huge, huge difference. And, the lender immediately said, you were right, obviously.
Hmm.
So, and from that point forward, that relationship, and that's one of the lenders I would refer to people now. Like that scenario where we understood why he was being careful with his money. It's his money, right? But now that the trifecta could move forward, and the respect was there, and they didn't question the numbers anymore.
Well, see, that's huge in two regards, because one, you went to bat for your investor and you knew your numbers. Um, and by going to bat, you got the funding for the deal. So
Yep.
that guy wouldn't have been able to fund the deal, at least with that hard money lender. But he also hit it out the park, and because knowing the market, knowing the comps, as well as going to bat for him, I'm sure that that's been a long-term relationship on both sides, with the hard money lender as well as the investor. So that's extremely important when you're building this relationship with your agent, is to know that they're going to have your back and go to bat for you on things like this. And that's everything when we're in this business together. Because as you listen to all these podcasts and you listen to all these people out there, they talk about your team, building your team. Your agent is going to be one of the most important people on your team when you're first starting out, because they've got more experience seeing houses. They've got more experience running comps. They've got more experience going through the entire purchasing process. They've got more experience dealing with lenders. They've got more experience dealing with home inspectors, all of that. So they're going to be your go-to person in the beginning to really kind of hold your hand and guide you down the road to investing in real estate. So it's so important to pick the right person that not only you like, but you respect. And I think that's one of the biggest things out there. And I think that's why you, Joe, have been able to grow and build, is because not only are you a pretty likable guy, but you know where the line is drawn, and you hold to that, and you earn everybody's respect off of that. So I think that is huge, and that's really what you want to find. You don't just want to find the person on the billboard that's got the big phone number and that's saying they're doing all this work. You want to find somebody that you can jive with, but is going to shoot you straight and tell you the real deal off the bat. So I think all that is extremely great. So I think right now, I think everybody out there who's going to watch this and listen to it is going to get a ton of value out of all of this. So in some closing words, do you have anything else that you'd really like to add onto some of these things? Maybe a question that I didn't go over, or some last minute tip to kind of help people out there that are thinking about house hacking, buying their first rental property, doing a flip, just to kind of to take us off into the sunset here.
Yeah, no, I think you've hit everything on the head as far as like what questions people need to ask, how they need to prepare, what they need to do to get themselves doing it. I think the only thing I would encourage people to do is to do it. If you want to do it, and you have an interest in it, I'm always reminded of the Steve Harvey. I don't know if you've ever seen it. You can find it on YouTube, but he was like, after a Family Feud episode, he gets up and he's talking to the crowd about, taking a leap. And he tells a story about his buddy who, is back in Ohio or whatever. Every Friday, Saturday night, he wouldn't be out with them at the bar, or he wouldn't. He'd leave at like 8 o'clock because he was up at 4 a.m. to mow grass. He started a landscaping company and he loved doing landscaping. That's all he wanted to do. Well, the guy apparently now owns the largest landscaping company in, the Midwest. So he found what he loved and he did it. So he talks about standing on the edge of a cliff and taking the leap of faith off the edge of the cliff. And he goes, and you think it's going to be like a movie, and here I go. And the wind catches your wings and you fly off and everything's just great from that point forward. He goes, that's not how it works. You jump off the cliff, the wind doesn't blow, the wind stops, and now you hit your nose on every single rock on the way down, the cliff. But right before you're about to hit the bottom, that's when that gust of wind comes and then takes you back up. And and it doesn't just keep you up. They're going to have little bumps along the road, but having the persistence to do it and having the guts to take the risk is so huge. Having the team around you that you know and trust is going to help mitigate that risk, but it's still your money. It's still your name signing on the line. There's risk involved, but you can't get to here without first doing that. They also call that the J curve of success. That basically when you make the leap, it's going to go down before it goes back up. But again, you can't do it unless you try.
I think that is extremely important, to just go out there and do it. Get the confidence, go out there, find your team, find your agent, find your market, and just decide, commit, and take action. So with that, Joe, I really appreciate your time. I think we're going to have to go ahead and do this again sometime and get a little bit deeper into the business. And on that note, I appreciate your time today, and everybody out there, we'll go ahead and talk to you later. Thank you very much.